my teammates can always be there for me to encourage me on, but mentally, that was something I had to work with more, and my teammates and coaches were.
There is a version of Kate Martin's story that never gets told. The version where she quietly fades into the background of a league that did not make space for her, where the momentum from Iowa never translates, where the WNBA becomes the place her career went to stall instead of soar. That version almost happened. And the only reason it did not is because of a phone call, one honest conversation with the person who knows her game better than anyone alive, and one expansion team willing to bet on exactly the kind of player Las Vegas never appreciated. This is the full story of how Kate Martin went from buried on the Aces bench to building something real in Golden State, and why the path it took to get there says everything about what this league rewards and what it wastes. To understand where Kate ended up, you have to start at Iowa. Not the highlights, not the bracket runs, not the national television moments, but the actual daily reality of what it meant to play alongside Caitlin Clark inside Carver Hawkeye Arena. Kate has been honest in interviews about her first impression of Clark. She was watching videos of this incoming freshman dropping 40-point games in high school, averaging what felt like 1,000,000 points, and her honest reaction was somewhere between skepticism and disbelief. She has described thinking something like, "Oh, this girl thinks she is about to come in here and rule the world." And then Clark arrived, and she did exactly that, immediately and without apology. Kate's reaction to watching that unfold was not resentment. It was something much more useful: respect. The kind that only comes from watching someone operate at a level you have never seen up close before. What made the Clark and Martin partnership so devastating at Iowa was not just talent, it was complementary instinct. Clark brought the fireworks, the logo threes, the step-back pull-ups, the no-look passes into traffic that made highlight packages write themselves. Kate brought everything underneath that: the structure, the steadiness, the physical presence that made Clark's game easier to run and harder to guard. When Clark needed room to operate, Kate was the one setting the screen that created it. When the team needed a rebound off a Clark miss, Kate was already in position. When a possession needed someone to hold it together under pressure, Kate was the one making eye contact with her teammates and telling them with complete certainty that everything was fine. That kind of player does not always show up in box scores. But remove her from the equation and you feel the absence immediately. Kate has described Clark's work ethic as something she had genuinely never encountered before. Not just the hours in the gym though, Clark was in there constantly, but the approach. There was no going through the motions. There was no easing into a practice or treating a drill like a warm-up obligation. Every single rep, every scout team possession, every individual workout was treated like the outcome actually mattered. Kate described it as approaching everything with a kind of excellence that made everyone around her raise their standard just to keep up. If you were across from Clark in a drill, you were her opponent, and she was coming to take something from you. That mentality does not just make one player better, it pulls an entire program upward whether they want to come or not. The numbers Kate put up during those two Final Four seasons at Iowa were consistently underreported because the conversation was always rightfully anchored on Clark's historic production. But 13.1 points per game and nearly 7 rebounds during the 2024 tournament run is not background player output. That is a starter making real decisions under real pressure in real high-stakes games. When Iowa beat South Carolina in the Final Four, the game Kate has called the defining moment of her career, she was everywhere. Not in a flashy way, in a winning way. The game plan that day asked for discipline, communication, and the willingness to execute the small details perfectly against a team with size advantages at almost every position. Kate delivered all of it. She has talked about how the team went into that game believing they could make the Final Four, but genuinely not expecting to make it to the national championship. When they executed the game plan and knocked off an undefeated South Carolina squad, Kate described it as still probably the single greatest highlight of everything she has experienced in basketball. Not because of what it did for the headlines, because of what it required from every player on that floor to actually pull it off. The bond between Clark and Martin was never just basketball chemistry. It was built on something more fundamental: trust that came from showing each other who they were outside of games, not just inside them. Kate has been thoughtful in describing her leadership style during those Iowa years. She was the calmer presence. The one who could look a teammate in the eyes during a timeout, slow everything down, and communicate that the moment was manageable. With Clark specifically, Kate was 2 years older and had earned the right to speak plainly when something needed to be said. But she has been clear that the reason Clark listened was not seniority. It was relationship equity. Clark trusted Kate because Kate had shown her, over and over again, through hundreds of small moments, that she had her teammates' best interest at heart. They had built a connection outside of basketball that made the on-court communication feel like second nature rather than instruction. That is the kind of dynamic that turns a good team into a great one. And it is the kind of dynamic that is almost impossible to manufacture on a new roster without earning it slowly over time. The WNBA was always going to be a shock to the system. Sue Bird has talked extensively about how brutal that transition is. For players who were dominant at the college level, the speed is faster, the physicality is greater, and the margin for error gets compressed in ways that catch even the best prepared rookies off guard. Kate understood that intellectually going in. Living it was something else entirely. She landed with the Las Vegas Aces, a franchise that had built itself around Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and a veteran core that had been winning championships together. Becky Hammond ran a tight rotation. The hierarchy was established. And in that kind of environment, a rookie who needed runway to develop was never going to find it by waiting politely. Kate's first few months in Vegas showed genuine promise. Around 20 minutes a game in May. Solid enough for a player still adjusting to the professional pace. But the arc bent badly in the wrong direction. By September, those 20 minutes had been cut nearly in half. She was down to 11.5 minutes a game, 2.6 points, 1.6 rebounds, and the playoffs were somehow even worse. 6 games, 3 total minutes, 3. That is not a development plan, that is a decision. Las Vegas had decided, without ever saying it plainly, that Kate Martin was not part of what they were building. She was depth on paper and invisible in practice. The cruelest part of that situation was not the lack of minutes. It was the way those months chipped away at something that had been built carefully over years. The confidence Kate carried out of Iowa was real. It was not arrogance. It was the earned certainty of someone who knew exactly how to contribute to winning basketball. In Las Vegas, that certainty had no place to live. She was running scout team reps while the veterans got the real work. She was staying ready on a bench that never called her number in any situation that mattered. Every game where she barely touched the floor was another quiet message from the organization that her presence was not shaping anything. And the compounding effect of that over months is genuinely damaging in a way that goes beyond statistics. It is not just about not playing. It is about watching your belief in yourself erode in real time while you cannot do anything to stop it because the system was never designed to give you the opening you needed. Kate has been honest about how difficult it is to come off the bench in limited minutes and be immediately impactful. The WNBA does not grade on a curve for circumstances. You are either making plays or you are not. And if you are not getting enough consecutive possessions to find your rhythm and build into a game, the odds of making those plays are stacked against you before you even touch the ball. She has described learning how to be patient, how to play under control off 2 feet, how to make the right read consistently rather than forcing the aggressive play. All legitimate growth. But none of that growth had a real environment to show itself in Las Vegas. The system was not set up to reward her development. It was set up to win with the people already winning. And she was not one of them yet. Then came the phone call. At her lowest point in Vegas, with the bench minutes piling up and the career she had imagined starting to feel like something that was slipping away rather than building toward anything, Kate reached out to Caitlin Clark. This was not a casual check-in between former teammates. This was the kind of conversation you have when you need someone who actually knows your game, knows your character, and will be honest with you without softening it into something easier to hear. Clark was dealing with her own harsh adjustment in Indiana at the time. The physicality, the pressure, the weight of carrying an entire league's new generation of fans on her back while learning how to be a professional. She understood adjustment. She understood the gap between what you are capable of and what the system around you is allowing you to show. And when Kate laid out exactly what was happening in Vegas, Clark did not try to spin it positively or tell her to just keep grinding. She said what needed to be said. Kate was not failing. The environment around her was failing her. That distinction sounds simple. In the middle of that situation, hearing it from someone who had watched Kate operate at her highest level and trusted completely what she brought to winning basketball, it hit completely differently than anything a coach or agent could have offered. Caitlin reminded her of exactly what they had built at Iowa. Not just the wins in the Final Fours, but the specific value Kate had brought to every game. The screens, the rebounds, the communication, the reads. The way her presence made the entire offense harder to guard because she was always doing the right thing in the right moment. She reminded Kate that real contributors in this league are not just scorers and stars. They are players who make the game easier for everyone around them, and that kind of impact does not disappear because one team's rotation had no interest in finding it. That conversation reframed everything. Leaving Las Vegas stopped looking like a failure and started looking like a choice, choosing a real opportunity over the illusion of one. And that shift in perspective was what Kate needed to walk into whatever came next with her confidence intact rather than beaten down. What came next was the Golden State Valkyries. The 2026 expansion franchise selected Kate in the expansion draft, and the difference in how that felt compared to her time with the Aces was immediate and total. Las Vegas had treated her like she was expendable, a depth piece who could be left unprotected without a second thought because the veteran core was always going to take precedence. Golden State treated her like she mattered from day one. The Valkyries were not handing out roster spots to familiar names and established hierarchies. They were building something from the ground up, and they needed players who understood how to shape culture, communicate under pressure, and make winning plays that do not always show up on the stat sheet. That description fits Kate Martin so precisely it almost sounds like the franchise description was written with her in mind. Head coach Natalie Nicasio had watched Kate in Las Vegas and understood what she brought even when the environment there was not set up to showcase it. In Golden State, the standard being set from the very beginning was effort, communication, and intent, the exact qualities Kate had spent her entire career developing and expressing. Mistakes can be coached. Lack of investment cannot. In that environment, the things that make Kate valuable are not just appreciated, they are foundational. She is not playing behind an established pecking order with no path upward. She is part of the group defining what the Valkyries actually are. That is what expansion teams provide in a way that almost no other situation in professional sports can replicate. You are not trying to fit inside someone else's finished structure. You are building the structure itself, and the players who shape culture in those early years carry that organization's identity forward for a long time. Kate has described the energy inside Chase Center during Valkyries games as something genuinely electric. The season tickets sold out immediately when the franchise launched. The ownership group came out publicly and set a championship expectation within the first 5 years, which in expansion team terms is extraordinarily bold. The fans have been loud and invested from minute one. She recalled a home game against LA where Golden State was losing and the crowd stayed the entire time, cheering from the first minute to the last. The kind of sustained energy that tells you the building is actually invested in what the team is building rather than just showing up for a winning scoreboard. People around the Bay Area are wearing Valkyries gear. The franchise has already created a cultural footprint that most expansion teams spend years trying to establish. Kate is not walking into a situation that needs to figure out whether it matters to people. It already matters. Her job is to help it become something that lasts. On the floor, her role inside the Valkyries system is exactly what her career has always prepared her for. Rebound with purpose. Defend with physicality and communication. Make the smart pass before the obvious one. Hit the open shot when the defense collapses on the primary option. Be the player who does every right thing on every possession, so that teammates can focus on their own assignments with confidence that she will handle hers. These are not glamorous responsibilities, but they are the responsibilities that winning basketball is built on. And in Golden State's system, which wants to play fast, push pace, and shoot threes at a high volume, Kate's ability to move without the ball, cut intelligently, and keep possessions alive with her effort and positioning makes her genuinely useful in ways the box score never fully captures.